So we have Todd Mekelburg who's going to talk to us today, and he has the unusual distinction of being somebody from Nebraska who moved out to sunny California. It's a great job working out there, loving life, and was somehow convinced to move back to Lincoln. So he can tell you about that. He's worked in plan giving and development. I don't know, lots of places in Nebraska, California, I think, Colorado, Maryland, and has been just a long time fixture. He's a fantastic fundraiser. In fact, I was on a call yesterday with him for a gift that he set up and add a little piece to add to it. I'm excited to see what he has to say. I'm giving a presentation to volunteers this afternoon, and so I'm hoping I can get some good insight because I haven't finished writing it yet. So I'm going to go back to the office and figure this out. So, Todd, it's getting my notes.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Really nice to see so many familiar faces this morning. Get this on. Yeah, as Keith shared, people ask me, so are you enjoying being back in Nebraska? And it's hard to believe, but it's been 2 years already since I got back. But it's my third time for living in Nebraska, and I'm hoping third time is a charm. I was here back in the 80s when I was a student at the then Union College, and then moved away. Never thought I'd come back, but lo and behold, they asked me to come back and help out with philanthropy. So I spent 15 years there. And then there was an organization out in California that I did not want to go to, but they offered my wife a job. And she said, "Oh, I think we should go." Well, all right. So I guess I'm going to go with you. So we went out there and we actually enjoyed our time out in California. But in 2022, we started asking the question, where do we want to be really long term? And Nebraska feels like home to us, really does. And coming back here has been a joy. We had a decision to make, though. Our daughter was in Denver. Our son was here in Lincoln. And so rather than flip a coin, we said, who is going to have the first grandchild? And fortunately, we guessed right because we're expecting our first granddaughter in November. So we're very excited about that and excited that we guessed right and came to the right place. But no, it has been wonderful to be back. And most of you know that I work for Nebraska Community Foundation. And I do want to dispel some rumors. Here this last week, there were some job postings for director of gift planning and assistant director. I actually got a call from one of my board members saying, "Are you leaving?" And I'm like, "No, I am staying put." But we are trying to look for some talent out there to join our team. And if you know of somebody who would like to apply for either one of those positions, the director is somebody who has to have at least 5 years of experience in plan giving. The assistant can have a related field, and that would be fine. We can teach them plan giving, and they can eventually grow into that director role. And then I'm senior director. So just one little word on there, but yeah, we're really trying to focus for sure on what's happening here in Nebraska with the transfer of wealth. But I've been doing plan giving now for about 38 years. And if you had asked me 38 years ago, do you think volunteers can raise plan gifts? I would have given you an emphatic no. There's no way that they can handle all the technicalities and nuances of plan giving. And I held that attitude for quite a while. And if you'd even asked me 2.5 years ago, "Hey, do you think volunteers can help with a plan giving campaign?" I probably would have given you a lukewarm, maybe, yeah, I could see that. Because by that point in my career, maybe you've had this experience too, I had worked with some volunteer groups, but always on current gifts. So a building campaign or scholarship campaign, something like that. And that went well. But I had still never worked with volunteers to help us with plan giving. And as I got ready for this, I went out and Googled on volunteer fundraising, those two words, and came up with lots of articles about how you can work with volunteers to raise current gifts. But you know how many articles I found about volunteers with plan giving? Exactly zero. There's nothing out there that really sets a precedent for using volunteers in plan giving. But I would like to change that, because if you asked me today what I think about using volunteers in plan giving, I would give you a pretty hearty yes. And what I've discovered is there are volunteers out there that are very willing to talk about plan giving, and they're excited about it. They want things to happen. And so that's what we're going to take a look at here. So as I look around the room, I see several different types of organizations represented. And what I want to do, I have to be really careful, Emily, that I do not extend beyond my leash here. But that's good. But what I want to do, as you think about your organization, I would like you to help me identify some volunteer groups. And Ryan, how's your handwriting? It's okay. I'm going to go with Emily's, and I'm going to give you 3 colors. You can choose whatever color you want. Yeah, I can't go beyond my leash. So, but yeah, help me out here, and let's put some volunteer groups. I would say for me, it's community members. So people who are in these communities are volunteers. But whether you're from education, healthcare, whatever, what are some volunteer groups that you might work with? Your board, and sometimes you'll have more than one board. Sometimes you've got a foundation board. Sometimes you have the operation board. So yeah, your board. What? Alumni. Yeah, those are good ones, aren't they? I don't know. Do you have like alumni for their honor years that come together and talk about gifts and stuff? Okay. Yep. So, but yes, especially as you get into the 40-year class, the 50-year class, it's like you could talk about plan giving with that group. Any other volunteer groups? Yeah. People that they show up kind of every day. And
you got the baby rockers that are I think it's easier to get Husker tickets than it is to get into that.
right. Okay, the baby rockers. So healthcare is where I was before coming back here for the 3rd time. And we had a really interesting volunteer group. The hospital I was at had established the first proton treatment center in the world. And they specifically treated prostate cancer patients. And so over the course of the years, these men who would come back for treatment, they called it radiation vacation. And they would come back and they do their treatment in the morning, and then they go play golf and tennis and sightsee and stuff. But they created this bond that they were an amazing fundraising team because of their experience that they had as a grateful patient. Anything else? Any other volunteer groups that you might think of? Events. Yes, those people are really committed, aren't they? When they show up early in the morning and stay late at night to run your events. How about professional advisors? I look at them as a voice in our communities that we might not treat them like volunteers or look at them like volunteers, but they really are, because they don't have to bring up the topic of charitable giving. But if we invite them to do that and participate, they act like a volunteer on our behalf. Anything else? So current plan giving donors, so they can talk the talk, walk the walk. Yep. Okay. You still have room left on there. Do you have anything to add, Ryan?
I've been so busy just trying to like spelling.
We will grade you when this is all done on handwriting, content, all of that. So I think that's good. So Okay, former employees, volunteers. Yeah, I think that's good. So you can see the different connections in these groups. Um, I think the question I want to pose to you is how can we incorporate these volunteers into our plan giving programs? And what I want to share with you this morning is I'm going to talk about 4 guidelines. And like I said, I went out there and Googled and tried to find some information and some guidance. There is none. So I just thought back over the last 4 years about my interactions with volunteers, specifically with Nebraska Community Foundation. And I want to share just 4 guidelines that I've kind of lived by or kind of gone by. But then the last part of what we're going to do, though, is spend most of our time. I want you to hear from 3 volunteers. And these 3 gentlemen have all been involved with a plan gift or with a plan giving program in their community. And I think you'll enjoy listening to them and hearing their story, and you will have a chance to ask them questions. So hold on to that. So here's the 4 guidelines that I have. And again, I better not step too far back here. So here's the 4 things that I kind of live by. Is with volunteers, it's so important to identify their passion. And I know with Nebraska Community Foundation, we run across people who are so passionate about their hometowns. They see down the road 10, 20 years, and they want to make sure their hometown is in a healthy place. Same with these other volunteer groups, a grateful patient or an alum that loves their school. Find out what that passion is. I have run across donors who have received a scholarship when they were in college, and that really becomes their passion. They want to make sure that the next generation has that opportunity and access to higher ed. So as you talk with your volunteers, identifying their passion is very important. The disappointing thing for me is, I wake up every morning like a lot of you do, and I think about plan giving most of the day. Unfortunately, our volunteers, and surprisingly, do not think about plan giving all day. And that's probably not their passion, but I want to show them how plan giving can be a means to an end. It can help make their passion a reality. The second guideline that I live by in working with volunteers is letting them define their time commitment. So like I said, they don't wake up every morning thinking about planned gifts. So I think it's really important to give them the time and the space to think about, well, how am I going to manage this time commitment? Volunteers run the gamut from retirees to business people to stay-at-home parents who are taking care of families. They come from all different backgrounds, but one thing they have in common, they're all busy. They have full schedules. And so this volunteer opportunity is going to be probably a small piece of what they do. And we need to just make sure that we understand that. The other thing I try to look for with this is really where their skill set is. As I've worked with volunteers, the idea is that everyone could go out and talk to other individuals about plan giving, but not everyone's comfortable with that. But I find people who are really excellent at organizing. And so it's like, hey, could you help us manage our lists and help us track our conversations so they can be a part of that? I find other people who are very uncomfortable with the idea of going out, making a phone call, knocking on a door, having a cup of coffee with someone, but they will be happy to connect. They know their community, or maybe they know their class, and they are willing to connect you to people who can make a difference. The third one that I have up here for a guideline is creating goals. And I put that, say creating goals, but then I say with flexibility. We are not going to dock these volunteers pay, or we're not going to give them a bad performance review. We need to be able to though, give them something to aim for. And a lot of times what we do is we say, hey, community, you want to do something with plan giving. What if you define a number of plan gifts that you'd like to raise? And what if you define a time period? And so that's your goal, is for the next 6 months, you're going to have activities, you're going to have asks, you're going to be out there really promoting plan giving. And then at the end of 6 months, take a breath. You've reached your goal. Other times they might say, we want to document 20 plan gifts. All right. How long do you think that's going to take? Let's start the clock going, and let's start counting these plan gifts. So setting goals, though, I think is important, so they have something to attain to. The last guideline that I have down here is creating tools. These are people, again, busy. They probably don't have a lot of plan giving experience. I think our role as plan giving professionals is to give them tools that they can understand and that they can use. And I've created a toolkit over time over here, and I've got 7 of them. I wanted to share those with you that I have found are important for volunteers to raise their confidence level in plan giving and how to go about that. So the first one is marketing messages. We love providing information that they can take and they can put into a newsletter. They can share a story with a friend. A lot of times, what we like to do is find somebody in that community that has a planned gift, and we write up that story. And then they can take that story and really elevate that and promote that in their community. But having ready-made marketing materials, whether it's technical in nature or more relational, is important for these volunteers. Second item is training. And we try to make sure we don't just give them training for the sake of training, but we really ask them, what would you like to know? And we've had groups that have come back and said, the most common is, I want to know how to make the ask. How do I sit down and talk to somebody about a planned gift? So we go through that training, we role play, we talk through the whole process of how to have that conversation so that we make them comfortable with that. I've had other groups who said, we really want to dig into the technical side. We've heard about these CRT things. What does that mean? And how do you talk about those so we can get more into the technical? It really comes down to what the volunteers want and where their comfort level is. I've worked with volunteers who say, I am perfectly fine with the ask. I really don't need any pointers on that. I know how to do that. Great. We will not waste your time talking about that. The third item I have down here is prospect identification. Let's see if I can get over here. And I think this is really important, is you could tell volunteers, hey, go talk to your friends and neighbors. But I think what we can offer them is a structure so that they approach the right people at the right time. And what we do for our communities, and you could do this for an alumni base, a grateful patient, is we create what's called a bullseye. And what this is looking at is it's looking at recency, frequency, and age. And the center of the bullseye are those people who have all 3 of those things. And in this example, the McCook community, they have 350 individuals who are 65 plus. They've given recently and they've given frequently. So the message to them is focus on those 350 and talk about those people, figure out based on circumstances who you think the right people to approach are. Once you go through the center of the bullseye, then you can go to the next ring and the next ring. But it helps bring some definition and structure if we can help them identify who their prospects are. The fourth one is referrals. So your volunteers go out and they start having conversations with individuals, and the individual says, well, I've heard about the CRT thing too. How do I set one up? Well, the volunteer is probably not going to be able to do that, but they can refer to an attorney, to some other financial professional. I think your job is to make sure that those connections are ready to go. A lot of times you will be that person where you will start having that conversation with the donor, and the volunteer will connect you and the donor together to have that more detailed conversation so that you can lead them through the plan giving conversation. But I think referrals are really important so that the volunteer doesn't feel like they have to know everything there is to know about plan giving. The fifth is a documentation process. And what this is for us is a simple 2-page form that a volunteer can take. It's got 3 steps on it, and it captures information about the donor. It captures information about the gift and asks for a copy of the will or the trust or the beneficiary designation. And then it asks them if we can thank them through the Legacy Society. What I like about this is it's very self-service. We have this on our website. I was gone on Monday all day. Tuesday morning, I came back in, and on my desk was one of these forms filled out. And I looked at it, and I didn't recognize the name because I had never had an interaction with this donor. But the volunteer had opened up the plan giving conversation last spring. They followed up with them periodically, asking them if they were still considering a planned gift and what that might look like. And last week, the donor eventually got that put in place. The volunteer filled this out, got the documentation, and mailed it to me. As a plan giving professional, I had no interaction with that donor. I look at that as a plus because those conversations are happening out there. And I look at that as, wow, that's pretty powerful when I don't have to be involved with that. And I want that to happen 10, 20, 100 times. What would that do for our plan giving programs if we can do that? The next one is progress reports. And, we talked about goals. And one thing that's important, here it is for a community, I think those volunteers need to see periodically what's happening. And I shared the bullseye with you. We put that into a report. And so our communities that are in a campaign, they can see exactly where they're at with each one of those groups, the bullseye, the next layer, the next layer. And we give them a chance then to periodically report to their board or to the larger community about what's happening in plan giving. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try. Yeah, okay, we're good. And the last one is stewardship. So it obviously is very important for these community members or for your volunteers to thank these plan giving donors. And that looks different for everybody. Now, for us, when somebody does a planned gift, they get a little windmill, usually presented at a public event, thanking them. Another thing we have done that surprised me is we do an annual training every year where we get about 300 or so people that come in for annual training. And this last year, we said, hey, let's change the lanyard color. And everybody has a planned gift gets a yellow lanyard. And I didn't think much about it. But there are communities now who are insisting that all of their residents or their people that are going to come to annual training are going to have a yellow lanyard. And they're kind of competing with each other on these yellow lanyards. But it's kind of fun to figure out ways to recognize these people and really thank them for what they've done. And I love it when it happens at the community level so that their neighbors, their friends are the ones thanking them. And not just the organization. So those are the 7 tools that I have put together for volunteers to help them feel comfortable about plan giving and having these discussions. But now I want you to hear this from the volunteers themselves. And I've got 3 individuals with me today. And these are representative of the NCF network, we have about 1,500 volunteers. And obviously not all of them are focused on plan giving, but there are a number of them that are. And these three gentlemen in particular, I have asked to kind of share their journey about how they've engaged with plan giving. So I'm going to start off. Dale Dooland is the first one. So Dale, can you go off camera and let's see if we can get him up here. This is promising. So how's the sound, Dale? Hey, all right, we can hear you just fine. So there are about 20 pairs of eyes looking at you. So, you know, look your best here this morning. But Dale is out in McCook. He is a farmer. He has a farm north of McCook. So can you hear me okay?
Not hearing you, Todd.
Okay. Let me come over here a little bit closer. How's that?
Yeah, that's much better.
Okay. I think I was back in the corner a little bit.
Stay close to that microphone.
So Dale is a farmer out in the McCook area, and he has been very involved with NCF. He has served on our statewide board for 9 years. He was chair of the board. But more importantly, he serves on the McCook Funds Advisory Committee. So he's very involved at the local level. And recently, he started up what's called the Resource Committee, and that's what we're going to kind of focus on out there. But one question I want to ask you, Dale, is 12 years ago, the McCook Fund had about $850,000 in their unrestricted endowment, and which is a nice amount. But 12 years later, they have $5.5 million in their unrestricted endowment. So the McCook community has about $250,000 every year that they can put back into the community. So my question, Dale, to you is how have planned gifts factored into that really significant growth from 850 to 5.5 million?
Well, we've been able to use that success, take our story out into the community, and we do it a couple of different ways. I think there's two things that contribute to our success. One is the community challenges we've done. It gives us the opportunity to talk to a lot of people in the community and improve the community awareness. The planned gifts have come from long-term relationships, going clear back to our inception in 2001. And we've over that time, we've grown this fund to about $8 million, of which Todd mentioned was $5 million unrestricted. Of the $8 million, I'm guessing 60% of that has come from planned gifts, and about 40% have come from our community challenges. And that's a little snapshot of where we are today with that.
So can you share, Dale, the gift that came in just last year that was kind of a surprise? Can you give them a little background about that planned gift?
Okay,
That's
what,
the Jim Lee gift.
Exactly. And I've been involved with probably the fund for around 15 years, and I always knew the Jim Lee gift is the Mr. Anonymous gift, because for about 10 to 12 years, I suppose, we would get gifts from an anonymous person, and they would, when we were doing some community challenge, they would make a nice gift. If we were working on a particular project, they'd make a nice gift. Gifts from $10,000 to $40,000 a year. So we knew someday we would find out who Mr. Anonymous was. And in January of 2023, Jim Lee passed away. And so now we learned a lot more about Jim Lee. Jim Lee was a 1953 graduate of high school. My mother tells, or excuse me, 54. My mother tells me he sat behind her in band. He was a pretty unassuming person, and not very active in high school. And when we looked up Jim Lee's photo in the yearbook, his total high school activities over 3 years were band and jazz band. So you can tell He was a pretty quiet individual, but apparently a pretty smart individual. And went to the University of Nebraska, got an electrical engineering degree, had a career in the public and power industry, married and had 2 children, and came back to McCook at retirement. He really didn't live any of his adult life in McCook outside retirement. And he was there just in McCook for a few years, very involved with YMCA, loved to work out. Then decided to move to retirement community in Hastings. And along in there somewhere around the early 2000s is when he was retired in McCook, he developed a relationship with the Nebraska Community Foundation Fund and other charities in McCook. And so when Jim Lee passed away in 23, his 2 children and his wife had predeceased him. And thankfully, Jim decided McCook should receive the benefit of his estate. And it was over $5 million, primarily distributed to 4 organizations. $1 million to the Boy Scouts Council of Grand Island, and the other $4+ million was distributed proportionally between the hospital McCook, the YMCA, and the McCook Fund. And I think it illustrates that this is a long game we play with Thanksgiving, and those relationships we develop over time. We just never know where they're going to take. McCook was fortunate enough to have the benefit of Jim Lee's estate.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that story, Dale. I know you have started what's called the resource committee that I mentioned, but can you share with this group, what is the focus of that group, and what are some of the activities that you have done recently to elevate the plan giving message in McCook?
Well, we have a fund advisory committee here with about 13 individuals that guide our organization here and make decisions on how to spend unrestricted funds, among other decisions we make. And we out of that 13, we've picked out 5 people. Actually, we didn't pick them out; they volunteered. Yeah. They tend to be people who have the skill set that Todd described in his remarks a few minutes ago. Those guidelines for making good volunteers to work in the planned giving area. And so they're deeply invested in community philanthropy, community development. They have lots of relationships. One of our resource committee members is 90+ years old, very active and very effective. And in some way, all of our members are effective. And so with working with Todd and CF and the database, we've put together a little action plan to have this steady approach to maintaining these relationships that we generate. Hopefully, plans get down the road. Some of them may come in a year or 2. Some of them may not come for 20 years. And Todd mentioned some of the tools that we're using on targeting individuals. Todd mentioned 350 persons. They're kind of on our list. Actually, we're meeting weekly and focusing on as few as 2 to 5 individuals, and we've got this thing narrowed down where we're just trying to take small, steady steps. And to use the story of the hare and the tortoise, you're all familiar with that kind of a race. We definitely are on the tortoise side, and I kind of describe myself as a small herd of turtles. From a cook that may not materialize in our life.
Yeah, you're a mighty group of turtles, though, Dale. So that's good. But let me share one thing that this group is doing, which I'm excited about. Is last year we were connected with Mark Weber, which I know a lot of you know through the CAP program, through his Omaha connections. But Mark came out and talked about his book, Spectrum of Legacies, and just about estate planning, but specifically how to talk to your family about what you're going to do for your community. And that really got some things started. And what Dale, yeah, there he is. I've got a copy in front of me too, Dale, just so we'll do double duty here. But one thing that they have done is here, I think last spring, they invited a group of professional advisors, and I think you ended up with 35 or 40 at that meeting that came in, they served them lunch, and then Mark did a webinar. And then he talked about this book to that group of professional advisors. The other thing they've done is they have started a ladies group, and they are inviting specific women in the community and their daughters to come, and they have a nice little group and they talk about the contents of this book. And it's pretty powerful, some of the steps they are taking to raise the awareness of planned giving in their communities. Some more general, but some are very specific. So my last question, Dale, do you have you've been doing this for a while, do you have any advice or counsel or any lessons learned as you've gone about this process of planned giving?
Well, me personally, I've had to learn that patience and persistence are really the two key factors here, and we're dedicated to that. We understand the business model of the community philanthropy and community development, and we're all interested in linking our community, in better shape than we found it. McCook is lucky to have a culture like that. Not everybody's in the boat. We are working to fill our boat with people that will understand that a certain percentage of their wealth will go to that community that benefits their family and their livelihood.
So
I would just finish with that again.
thank you, Dale. And what we're going to do is you are not off the hook yet. You're done with the main part, but if you could go off camera, off mic, but stay on the session, because we're going to have some questions and answer. And I saw a hand over here. Write your question down, and we'll get the three of them together, and then you can ask away, right? So thank you, Dale, but do not leave. I will come find you if you do. So the next person that I want to introduce to you was gracious enough to come in person. So Doug Friedley, come on up here. Thank you for coming today. But Doug is the director of the Missouri Valley Lewis and Clark Visitor Center down in Nebraska City. But more important than that, he has a very strong connection with NCF. He was really boots on the ground when NCF got started, and he was out working with these communities on affiliating with NCF. But most recently, though, he has been involved with the Nebraska City Fund, and he has a deep interest in planned giving. So tell us a little bit, Doug, about what's happening in Nebraska City around planned giving, and how are you approaching that?
Right. So, and Dale, God darn it, you're ahead of us again. Nebraska City and McCook, we're in a challenge grant thing together, raising current funds, and we were always competing with McCook, and now they've left us in the dust. And so obviously we have not done our job with planned giving like they have, but we, like many Nebraska Community Foundation affiliates, we want to raise 5% of the transfer of wealth in our community and have that permanently endowed in our community and give back to the community. So our goal is 32 million and for our transfer of wealth. And so that's our big goal. And so I and one of the other founders of the Community Foundation Fund 25 years ago, started early on thinking about not just current gifts, but we knew the big gifts would come through estate planning. And so he's a financial advisor, and we have worked over the years. And I'm proud to say just last year, we got a really nice planned gift out of that process. Here's a blue collar worker who made scholarships for blue collar worker jobs. And that has inspired other people around the community saying, oh my gosh, we didn't know he had that kind of money, because he certainly doesn't dress like he had that kind of money. But that's been inspiring, and has inspired a couple of other people to think about getting serious about planned giving.
So, Doug, you have a kind of a requirement or an expectation that everybody that's on your committee have a planned gift. So how is that message received?
Okay, so when we recruit, first of all, we set ourselves a goal over 10 years ago that 100% of our committee members would make a planned gift back to our Community Foundation endowment. Sounds easy? Nice goal. Lots of hard conversations, but we made it. And we were the third community in Nebraska to get that accomplished. So 100% of our committee members confirmed a planned gift. Then, as we're recruiting new committee members, we say, this is not an expectation, but it's actually a requirement that you give 3 ways. Number 1, you give a current gift. Number 2, you make a gift to our endowment, cash. Number 3, you make a planned gift. We say that in our initial meeting when we're talking about these prospects that want to join our committee. And then we say, if you're not ready to make that commitment, it's got to be finalized within 1 year. Maybe it's not the time for you to join our committee. But this is something we believe in, and that's part of being on our committee. Guess what? 15 years later, we have 100% of our FAC members who have joined the committee who have made a planned gifts. So now we're up to about 30 planned gifts just from that cadre.
I think that's called plan giving peer pressure.
Yeah, it is. And some people say, you can't say that. You'll scare them away. I said, if they don't want to be involved, if they don't want to have the passion, if they don't want to have the commitment, we'll look for someone who does. And we're finding them.
Yeah, you are. I've not had anybody in Nebraska City be offended that you've asked them, for a planned gift.
Yeah.
How do you talk to your community members? Because I know you personally have a lot of experience with asking for planned gifts, but how do you raise that topic in Nebraska City?
Yeah, well, the first hurdle we found was talking to our spouses. What the hell are you thinking? You're going to take money away from our kids and give it to the community? Yes, honey, we are. And this is why. Oh my gosh, those conversations went on and on. You read this? It talks about the process of husband and wife sitting down and thinking about what is important in our lives. Chapter 2, do you have enough? Yes, we found out we do have enough. Our financial planner helped us. And so doing it ourselves before we talk to others is key. And that, and so we share our story. And when people hear what we've done personally, they're much more likely to think about what they can do. And we always talk about not just Community Foundation. I want you to think about giving back to other charities within the community, the church, the hospital, your school, library, whatever causes they have been involved in the community that makes a difference to them and their family. So it's for them, not so much for us.
That collaborative approach is really important in the community for the charities to come together and talk about that plan giving conversation. So Nebraska City is getting ready to go in what's called a challenge grant, where they are going to receive $150,000 if they can raise $300,000. And those are current dollars, but how are you going to incorporate planned giving into those conversations?
Yeah, so at the same time, we in McCook were doing our first challenge grant. We had donors because at that time we had all kinds of projects going on in Nebraska City. People had already pledged cash over the next 5 years to the hospital, to our church remodeling, to the North Central Catholic. They said, we're tapped out. We'd love to help you, but we just can't right now. Have you considered making a long-term plan gift? So it wasn't, that, sorry you can't help us. Yes, you can help us in another way. And so we weave that into the conversation, or both.
Yes.
Right?
That's what you hope, is to have a blended gift.
A blended gift, but you don't get unless you ask.
Okay, so I want to ask you the same question I asked Dale, is you've been doing this for a while, and Nebraska City has been very successful in planning gifts, but do you have any lessons learned or words of advice from a volunteer's perspective?
Honestly, it's not for everyone. Yeah, I know I did come from, don't we like that Nebraska nice slogan? You've got to build relationships. This is built over time, a lot of time. You don't just sit down and say, we need you to make a planned gift, except if they want to join our organization. We build relationships over a long period of time based on trust. And that's how we always start the process. People give to a vision, to a mission, based on their passions, not to a budget. So we're not talking about, we need to raise this amount of money. We're talking about, this is what it will do for the community. What are your ideas? How would you like to see grants made back to the community? What's your passion?
Thank you, Doug. Hopefully you can see how these volunteers are having these conversations. So same with you, don't go anywhere. You can go sit down, but we might call on you here in just a sec. So our last gentleman, and Cale, I want to invite you to come off camera and unmute your mic if you would. And I want to introduce you when he gets on here. There he is. Hey, Cale, good to see you. So Cale Pallas is the owner of Pallas Seeds. So he's in the agricultural business over in Stromsburg, Nebraska, just right north of York. And he and his wife, Jessica, have, I think it's 2-year-old twins now. Is it two now? Yep. All right. So yeah, if he looks a little tired, that's it. So, but Cale is a busy guy, but most recently though, he added a title, which is chair of the Stromsburg Legacy Fund. And they are one of our newer funds, just getting started. But I think, Cale, I'd like you to share with this group, when you were kind of talking to the community and getting started, I don't think you were thinking plan giving, but you put an ad in the paper, just asking for input and advice and stuff. And tell us what happened from that.
So maybe I'll kind of flip it a little bit on Todd. Is there was a very small group of us in the community that had talked about, we need some kind of like community fund or community foundation for forever. We didn't really know anything about NCF or anything at the time. But we had finally got to the point where we're like, maybe NCF is the right choice for us. So we met with Casey and we were really thinking, well, we just need to have something in place because people love this community and maybe this is a vehicle to, where people would want to leave gifts. But I guess we never had any intention of like going out and talking to people or anything. We were just like, well, we'll just build this and it'll, people will donate. That was a little bit, maybe overthinking it. But that being said, so our small group wanted to kind of expand and get a whole potential FAC together to pursue joining with the Nebraska Community Foundation. And so, yeah, we put a kind of like a little article in the paper and just said, hey, this is kind of what we're thinking, this is kind of the benefits for the community for the long term. And had a little meeting, didn't have a lot of people show up, honestly. But from that, we had a family reach out, he messaged me on Facebook at 9:37 in the morning and said, hey, I'm from there. I don't live there. I haven't lived there since high school, but I want to leave a gift. And so that was, before we were even fully,
into NCF, I had reached out to Todd, and I was like, well, you guys really need to start it as a community fund first, and so we did that, we got that, and it's kind of just, grown, in our very short time, less than a year, the amount of, I guess, planned gifts that not even Todd really knows about yet, so we need to probably update you. It's beyond our wildest dreams that, just getting started, we would have, the very first person that would reach out would be such a substantial gift. But it's just amazing the community support that we've already got.
So you and I talked kind of at the beginning of this, and you're like, what do I do? Well, what did you do over the next few weeks and months as you talked with that planned giving donor? I mean, what was the nature of your conversation? I mean, how did that proceed?
Well, yeah, it was awkward at first, but they were really passionate about the community and getting their resources back to the community to see, what it could do for, long term. And originally it was supposed to be all just a long-term planned gift that would come later on. Now there's been some changes and some other things that have happened within the family. So some of that is going to come to fruition sooner than later. But the conversations really kind of went from, well, what are you going to do with this? And, how, what is the process and everything like that. And importantly, as we were getting started, there were just, we didn't have any of those things in place. And to be completely honest, we've never given a grant. We don't have our process really set in place. We don't really have any money right now. So, but it's just been, the conversations have really kind of changed from kind of being maybe awkward and, well, what about this, what about that, to having Todd and both the gifters, attorney being involved, kind of working on a lot of those technicalities, which has been nice to maybe not put so much on my shoulders that we, I have really no idea on some of this, and the gift itself is maybe a little more complicated than just writing a check. So, but now, from my conversations with the gifters, we've talked kind of sort of on a monthly basis, and it's more kind of like a friendly, just to check in how they're doing, and then, we talk about some of the other things on the gift side as well, but it's really transformed from, well, we want to give this gift and how does this get done and all this other stuff to, let's talk about, what the community will, maybe look like, and just kind of talk about personally, like how that affects us both, someone who doesn't live here but wants to give here, and both me and our FAC and our community, like how this will affect the community moving forward.
Yeah, so Cale, is it safe to say that your comfort level in talking with this planned giving donor has increased pretty dramatically over time?
Absolutely, yeah.
I have
Yeah,
noticed that. I have noticed that significantly, all the way from, I'm not sure what to say to this guy, where I have had one phone conversation with the donor and I've had a couple email exchanges, but otherwise, Cale, as the volunteer, has driven this conversation and engaged with this donor to the point where they are leaving the substantial gift for the benefit of Stromsburg. And I think it's a pretty amazing journey. The other thing you'll notice about Cale, as compared to Doug and myself and Dale, he's in a different generation. And I think that's surprising to some people that a 30-something is sitting down and having these planned giving conversations with donors. But it is possible. Cale has shown us that, and it's opened to a whole new world for me, Cale, to know that 30-year-olds can talk about planned giving. So my final question, the same as to the other guys, do you have any words of advice or any thoughts? to share?
You know, I guess I would love to see if everyone could find a donor like we have to kind of sort of push your way through learning how to talk or have the conversations about plan giving. They were really gracious with their time and you know, very forgiving as I would have these conversations and say, well, I don't really know, and then and giving me time to figure that out and everything like that. So it's been really rewarding, I think, for both myself and our FAC to have someone that is willing to go through that, because it has been a lot of work on the donors end to get this gift going with all the challenges that they've faced.
Yeah.
So, but that being said, it's about talking about, the passion that me as a volunteer has for my community and the hope that I have for it in the future. And I think that that's really important as we talk about plan gifts.
So same instructions, Kale, is don't go off mute, don't go off camera, but I want to invite Dale to come back on mic and on your camera. But I hope you can see from these three talking about their experiences that volunteers are ready and willing to have these conversations. We have to do our part as gift planning professionals to equip them, make them comfortable with this, put them in that environment. I know NCF, we have collectively a goal of 1,000 planned gifts by June 30th of 2028. We're at 350. I know that is not something I can do by myself. I could probably hire 2 or 3 more people and I couldn't reach that goal. But my confidence level of reaching that goal is pretty high if I can replicate what Doug and Dale and Kale are doing across this state. So with that, I know you had your hand up, Barbara. I don't know if you still have that question, but these 3 are available. I could be, but these 3 are the ones you really want to hear from. So do you have any questions for Kale, Dale, or Doug? And I would invite you to, first of all, identify who you're directing the question to, and then ask your question. Yes.
How did you, I know you have the guidelines, like too. You found 3 really passionate. And how rare is that? And how did or in turn, how did you foster that in any way?
Yeah, I think it's not planned giving that taps into that passion. That passion is simmering there. And I think it's the same whether you have alumni or patients or whatever those volunteers look like. I think it's there. It's just showing those volunteers the power of planned giving. And once they understand, oh man, we want to get to 32 million. How do we do that? I can show them planned giving you're going to take leaps and bounds towards your goals as opposed to baby steps. So I view a lot of other people bringing that or elevating the passion of those volunteers. I'm just there to show them the opportunities. This is the way I describe it. Yeah, Barbara, you've been patient.
My question for any of the volunteers, I know that especially in rural Nebraska, just community culture, that privacy is so important to people, and people are hesitant to share about their wealth or their financial planning with their neighbors. People often might go out of town to somebody like you to have that conversation because it's more private to come to Lincoln and talk to you than it is to talk to their neighbor in small town. So how do these volunteers broach that, and how do they open up these conversations? I know you said there's a big anonymous gift, and how do we talk about this with people who are really reluctant to share anyone, especially their own neighbors?
So Dale, did you hear Barbara's question? Because I want to call on you for this one.
I did, and I think I can answer that question. I love Kale's story, the startup story. There's hundreds of them in our network, and they're all a little bit different. But her story is that we had one individual that understood the power of community foundations, and he he went down Main Street and recruited people to serve on the advisory committee, and then recruited $1,000 founders gifts. And they started our fund with about 50 or 75 of those. But back to your question, so we got started with that small gift, and it was actually a few years before we really had our first larger gift. And what you said is absolutely true. A couple of our early larger gifts, they bypassed our local advisory committee, and because of our affiliation with the Nebraska Community Foundation, people like Todd, who are very, very professional in what they do, they went directly and worked with them, and we found out later that they had made gifts, and they were larger gifts and technical in nature. So we in the McCook here on the Fund Advisory Committee, we're much like Kale. We're just a lot of passion about improving our community, making our community better, and looking for ways to do that. We're not polished speakers. We're not plan giving professionals, but it's interesting to me when, if you're speaking from the heart, that's very powerful. And we can figure out the technical side of it. So that's one of the strengths of our organization. Connecting these people with someone who does have the technical expertise, and we can handle the small details if they're willing to do that. But that's what McCook is bringing.
So one thing I've learned after moving back to Nebraska is you don't ask a farmer how many acres he has, and you don't ask a rancher how many head of cattle they have. They will disclose that to you in their own time. But this whole conversation around wealth, it's really, to me, a follow-up conversation. Keith mentioned this donor we're dealing with. The first visit we had, it was pretty tight-lipped as far as what she had. But by the third visit, she was bringing balance sheets and income statements. And it's like, whoa, this is a lot of information. But it just takes time for that to happen. But yeah, Kelly.
I don't know why this has never hit me, but I love so much. My background is as an estate planning attorney, and statistically, many people still don't set up their estate plan, but it wreaks all sorts of havoc when there's generational planning going on. And I love this so much because it is normalizing not only giving, but it is normalizing the conversation around creating an estate plan and setting up plan giving as a part of that, particularly in smaller communities. I think that's a huge ancillary benefit. It embodies one of the many things that community foundations can do. The question, though, is for many of the folks in the room, not having a community foundation or not having that affiliate structure where you have that smaller communities where maybe there's some similar goals, is there anything you would change or do different in leveraging volunteers? Thinking about a more traditional nonprofit.
Yeah, I think I would, and go back to that list, because I think back about my experience in higher ed or healthcare. And to me, it is really working with that group on what fits them. This whole program is, to me, customizable. So if you have a group of alumni who come to you and say, we want to create a scholarship for our class, or whatever that looks like, it's like, that's where you tap into that. So this is something you're really passionate about. Okay, here's how you could do the journey. What's your bandwidth? How much time do you have to invest in this? Are you willing to do this over the course of several years? It's asking all those upfront questions and then customizing it. One thing I've really hesitated on is saying, here's the program, communities, go do it. It's instead figuring out what they're willing to contribute as far as their time and effort. And then if that's one conversation a year, let's do it. I would rather that happen than no conversations. But thanks for that comment about normalizing it, because
Powerful, it's like your neighbor next door.
yes.
It's so cool. I never thought about it.
Yeah. Do you have, oh, I'm sorry.
I would think your thought that I would think that it would be, this might be my, everybody who goes into development who says they're not afraid to make the ask is mine. I mean, initially, but because you're afraid that you're being that person.
Uh-huh.
What do you know? But I would think if it's the local convenience store coffee house, and it's somebody you know from the community, it'd be easier to share that information, or at least, get that feedback from somebody who works with you.
Yeah.
That's what I love about this.
Mhm. Okay, we have reached our time limit, but is there one last question? If not, would you join me in just thanking these 3 volunteers? So Dale and Kale, you can get back to your day's work, but thank you so much for sticking with us and being a part of our meeting. We appreciated that. And Doug, same to you.